Hey, what's going on, guys? So today we're talking about a Super Quant Master Duel deck profile. Now, I will say, one of these cards are banned, so I'm actually going to, if you're not into Master Duel, you can actually still use this deck exactly. I'm just going to change some cards at the end of the video. It's a very similar deck in regular TCG because there's one card, and it should be pretty obvious what the card is, that makes you have to shift the deck around. But without further ado, this is a deck that I've been playing since I first started on Master Duel, and I don't know if you guys saw like first impressions of Master Duel video like a month or 2 months ago. Since that video came out, I've been building and playtesting this deck. I think the highest I've gotten to so far is Plat 2 with this deck. And I've hit the upper echelon. I think it's Diamond. Is it Legend? Is that Duel Links? I've hit that with other decks, right? So this deck is still spicy. And this version of this deck is really, really good. This is probably the best version of Super Quant. But without further ado, let's just jump into it. Starting with, of course, 3 copies of Super Quant Fairy Elfin. This is one of the best, if not the single best, if you could tell. Like, this is the only Super Quant that's being ran at 3. If those who don't know, this card has 2 effects. You can tribute it, reveal 3 Super Quant monsters with different names from your deck. Your opponent chooses one at random, and some of them's got that pantheism sort of effect. And what's really cool about this card is its first effect technically is that it can change the levels of all monsters you control, right? So there's a lot of different interactions you can do there just with that secondary effect alone, because there are so many different monsters in this deck. But it's really that first, that's a second effect that we really like to use. And it's searchable off of blue, it's summonable off of green, and it's searchable off of another card as well. I am running 2 copies of Super Quantum Blue Layer, 2 copies of Super Quantum Green Layer, 2 copies of Super Quantum Red Layer, and 2 copies of Super Quantum White Layer. Every Super Quant card has an effect when it's summoned, normal or special summoned, or when it's sent to the graveyard, or if it's sent to the graveyard, I believe is the actual phrase, because it's when it's summoned, but if it's sent to the graveyard, right? So that's sent off of a card effect, that's sent off of cost, doesn't matter, right? And that's what's so great about this, is that not only do they all have effects like that, but they all have different effects like that. Like, it's kind of like how Prank Kids, they all have an effect and then they special summon, right? These all have 2 different effects, which makes it very unique in that sense and able to do a lot of things. So essentially, when they're summoned, Blue Layer adds a Super Quant card other than itself. That's including the field spell and the trap card. Like these cards as well that I'm not running are also searchable off of Blue Layer, right? When Green Layer is normal or special summon, you can special summon a Super Quant monster. This is including itself, so you can easily get that Xyz 4 monster if we're looking for it. Red Layer is the monster reincarnation. When it's normal or special summoned, you can see it has another effect here. We'll talk about that in a second, where it can add a Super Quant monster, but I actually don't think it's just a monster reincarnation. Remember, yeah, it's Super Quant card, so that's including a Link monster, which I'm not running, the one Magnus, the one what have you. Like, there's so many great cards this card can add. It can add the field spell back. There's so many great things. And then when White Layer is special summoned, you can send any Super Quant monster, including itself, right? So that's, Blue Layer, Green Layer, Red Layer to get their effects, or White Layer to get its effect, and its level and attribute becomes that level and attribute, right? So that allows for different unique plays there as well, because like I said, they all have effects if they're sent to the grave. So if blue is sent to the grave, you could target 3 Super Quant cards, shuffle them into the deck. I think if this card came out like 1 or 2 years later, it would draw 1 card. But, it's because it's the Digustal Emerald effect for Super Quants minus that. But that's super great, especially for this. It's kind of why I can get away with just running 2 of each. Green layer, if it's sent to the graveyard, you can discard a Super Quant card to draw 1 card, which ends up doing super well. It does kind of conflict with Pot of Prosperity, though. Red layer is actually really solid, too. You can target a Super Quant card except itself, or a Super Quant monster except itself, special summon it, right? But it cannot activate these effects. And so there's a lot of different interactions there, because it doesn't say an attack or defense position, right? So there's just different things you can do with that as well. And then white layer, if it's sent to the graveyard, you can add 1 fairy elfin, right? So this is the searcher for that, which is also why we're able to run these are 2, because all of them search, like blue searches all of them, red adds them all back, green draws, white searches white, it just white, and then this white also searches that out as well, right? And so Super Quant red layer can be special summoned if you control no monsters. It's not like a Cyber Dragon effect, it's like a junk forward effect, so your opponent doesn't have to have a monster. You can just summon this out for free if you have no monsters. And then this one, you can send 1 non-light Super Quant monster from your hand or face up on the field to the graveyard and special summon this card out. So you're getting a free summon, you're getting its effects, and you are also getting the Super Quant card's effects that you pitch. Right, so that was, we're already 6 minutes into the deck profile, but that's what all the Super Quant cards do. I think 2 is a good enough ratio. I just find that running any more than 2 just starts to get cloggy, because they are unfortunately all hard once per turns. And if they weren't, this would be a tier 0 deck confirmed. For the hand traps, I am running 2 copies of Max C, 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joy Springs. The last 2 monsters, as you can see, are Destiny Hero Celestial and Destiny Hero Dasher. This deck, if this card was a Link 2, this deck would be probably tier 2, tier 2.5, but the fact that it's a tier 3, it does kind of, you do kind of have to run different cards, because this deck can easily get 2 monsters out very quickly, but it's that second monster that it's having a tough time getting to, right? So it's not hard to get 2 monsters out, but it's really hard to get 3 monsters out. But that's it for the monsters. For the spells, 1 Monster Reborn, 1 Foolish, 1 Upstart, 1 Terraforming. I just always, I'm so used to running 1 Upstart from the TCG that I just always do it in Master Duel as well. You know, you don't really need to be, like, you don't really want to max out on Upstart if you're running Pot of Prosperity, which this deck can run Pot of Prosperity pretty well. I know it does use this extra deck a lot, but there is a good amount of space for that. 2 copies of Fusion Destiny, obviously. 2 copies of Lightning Storm, because I did kind of build this deck to go second, because going second is really good at Master Duel because of the 1 duel only type format. But Lightning Storm is just a great card in general. Could also be Dark Ruler No More. 2 copies of the Field Spell. I really like this ratio of 2 copies of any Field Spell and Terraforming. So you're essentially running 3 copies of the Field Spell, because you don't really want to max out on the Field Spell because it doesn't do anything in your hand. The only thing it really does is you can send it off a green layer, and that's not really that great. 2 copies of Emergency Teleport. This searches blue. This gets to blue layer. Like at this, you have to run it. What's really cool too about this card is that you can summon it from hand too. So if you draw like E-Telly with the 2 blue layer, you know, because you don't want to run 3 E-Tellys for just 2 blue layer, because you know that's more E-Tellys than blue layer. You have a chance of drawing a dead E-Telly, right? But since blue layer brings itself back, because blue layer can shuffle itself back into the deck too. E-Teller is almost always going to be live. 2 copies of Foolish Return. This is just because this card is just literally everywhere. It does go good, really good against Eldritch too. Foolish Return was, I saw it at a YCS, so I've been utilizing this card a lot. 3 copies of Twin Twisters. Love Twin Twisters in this deck. Like I said, all the Super Quant cards have effects if they're sent to the graveyard, and that's as a card effect. That's just as a link material, single material, as Z's material, and that's if it's sent off of cost. Like for Twin Twisters. The 2 infinite permanences, I think I only have 2. I actually just got the 3rd one, but there's no room for that, right? As far as the main deck, if we're not running the Fusion Destiny package, like if we get rid of these 2 and get rid of this one, the obvious move is to go to Scythe, right? Just go to Artifact Scythe, and at this point, you can, it's kind of up to personal preference. You could add an extra copy of, say, like blue layer, white layer, and I think in the TCG, Emergency Teleport's at 3, so you might even be able to add another Emergency Teleport. But really what I would do is just add 2 hand traps, right? 2 hand traps and 2 cross outs, or 2 hand traps and a call by, 2 hand traps, different things like that. Like in the TCG, because we obviously don't have max C either, this is kind of the deck I would be running. I don't even have called by because this has cross it, because it just, the format's completely different. And listen, the reason I like cross out in this deck, this is kind of like the TCG version of the deck, if that makes sense. The reason I like cross out in this deck is because we really do want our emergency teleports to resolve. And the Fairy Elfin is such a crazy Ash Blossom target. Like, if you normal summon, there's a lot of hands where you normal summon Fairy Elfin. If it doesn't resolve, you just have to scoop. So cross out's really, really good. So if I was running this in the TCG, I would be doing that in the main deck, and then this in the extra deck. Because at this point, because we don't have to run the Anaconda and Destiny Hero Phoenix Enforcer package, I would run these 2 cards instead, right? So if you want, take a screenshot or take a picture, what have you. This is the this is essentially the TCG version of this deck that I'd be running. Still going second. This deck does still go second pretty well. But that being said, we're just going to switch these back real quick to get to the Master Duel version that I had, because Master Duel, even though it's a very similar game, it is just slightly different enough to where, and this won't take too long, to where it matters. Like, the differences between the two formats actually end up mattering, right? Because even though you could technically still run this package, Destiny Hero, Phoenix Enforcer, Destiny Hero Dasher, Destiny Hero Celestial, and Fusion Destiny, like, you could still run those cards, but it's not as good to just hard draw and then just drop them down. As I'm trying to find, there he is. Also, something of note, Destiny Hero Plasma does kind of synergize with this deck as well, just because of the effect that they could activate their effects in the graveyard, right? And Skill Drain's a great card, right? But anyway, for the extra deck, kind of already went over it a little bit, talking about Anaconda and Destiny Hero Phoenix Enforcer. I am running 1 copy of Nightmare Shark. Nightmare Shark has the effect where you can attach a level 3 water monster from your hand or side of the field with XYZ material, which that's what this is. But the main thing that we're looking for is detaching effect to attack directly. We can sneak in game, obviously, with that too, but it's kind of like the Zodiac Borbo thing, where we're able to attack directly, get out our Zeus, and then just move from there, right? So 1 copy of Nightmare Shark, 2 copies of Super Quantal Mecha Beast Grampulse. So they all of these monsters cannot attack unless they have XYZ material, but they do have a effect where they can attach a Super Quant monster. I just wanted to make sure that this one had it too, but yeah, they all have an effect where they can attach a Super Quant monster for your hand or field. So you can do just different interactions and cool things with that. But then they all have a secondary effect, or I guess technically a first effect, where once per turn they can activate an effect. So this one says once per turn you can detach an XYZ material, target 1 spell or trap on the field, and destroy it. Now what's really cool about this is that if this card has Super Quantum Blue Layers XY material, it actually becomes a quick effect. And so that's where the synergy, that's why I wanted to talk about in the TCG that this deck is still very playable, because the synergy there is you're able to get this card out next to Artifact Dagda. And then in that situation, we set our Scythe. During our opponent's standby phase, we activate Grampulse's effect, detaching our last material, or detaching one of our materials of our Grampulse to pop our own Scythe and summoning the Scythe back out. And that's how you get to the Scythe lock. So this card is super big if you're running the Scythe version of this deck. Obviously, we're running 1 copy of Downward Magician. It just goes on top. It's just more material for Zeus. 2 copies of Super Quantum Mecha Beast, Ouroboros. That's what I always call it, the green one, right? But this one has the effect of you can target one other face-up monster on the field, change it to face-on defense position. So that actually is still really good, especially because like Sword Soul is really popular. You know, a lot of fusion decks are very popular, so this can interact with that. Like, oh, you summon your Mogi, flip it to face-on defense position. One copy of number 41 Baguska, because it's probably one of my favorite cards. And all, like, how could it not be? How could it not be one of your favorite cards? There is a level 5 or a rank 5 monster that goes on top of rank 4s. It should probably be this instead, but I like this card because this deck, even though we are main decking Twin Twisters and it does have access to Grand Pulls, it does struggle with heavy back row. Like set 5 pass, I hope I draw Twin Twister, or I hope I draw Lightning Storm, because if not, like I said, we really want our Super Quantum Fairy Alphen to resolve, and if they compulse it, if they torrential it, if they strike its effect, we're not having a good time. So this card's going to be able to target one card on the field and destroy it. So that's not just spells and traps, but that's the main thing we're looking for. And it also is going to out, you know, big problematic monsters. This card actually also has a similar effect that once per turn you detach material, target one monster on the field, destroy it. So it's kind of like the Dryden effect, except for it's a pop. This card's effect says you can target one effect monster on the field, negate its effects, so that's really good too, because it's a quick effect if you have the white layer, right? So a lot of card text, a lot of reading with this archetype, and that's kind of one of the sneaky things about this archetype, is that nobody really knows what it does. So that's really cool there, that because it is an older archetype, but it can really pack a hefty punch, especially with one copy of Super Quantal Mecha King Great Magnus III. No, I'm just kidding. But if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can special summon up three Super Quantum Mech Beast Xyz monsters. That's not really why we're here, though, right? So it has effects based on how many Xyz materials it has. So if it has 2 or more, you can shuffle a card from the field back into the deck, right? So it's like a Phoenix Wing Wind Blast, except for instead of going to the top, it shuffles it right back into the deck, right? And then if it has 4 or more, it's unaffected by card effects except Super Quan card effects, right? And there's a couple of decent Super Quant cards that synergize well with this card, but it's just like they're kind of bricks, because I don't really go into this card very often, even though it looks super dope. And this is, I mean, like, the way this card looks is why I play the archetype. But anyway, if it's 6 or more, it's a Thunder King Ryle, so your opponent can't add cards from the deck to the hand by card effects. So it's just, if you're able to get this out, it's game. Especially with 6 materials. This is another big boss monster, Divine Arsenal A Zeus. I'm sure you guys know what this does. The Sky Thunder. Predaplan Verite Anaconda. And then an Access Code Talker. What is cool about the other version of the deck, the TCG version of the deck, the Artifact Scythe version, is since we are running the Link 3 Super Quad monster because we have space, it literally is the 16th card. Like, if I could do a 16 card extra deck, I would be running the Super Quad Link monster because it does come up sometimes, but it's not all the time. So when this card becomes Dagda, this card becomes a Super Quad monster. And so what's cool is that Access Code Talker can get a little thicker, right? Because we can get a Link 3 instead, and we have more monsters to banish and pop. But let me know what you guys think. This is the Super Quantum deck profile. This is the main deck I like playing on Master Duel. If you guys like to see more Master Duel deck profiles, let me know. If you like this sort of style where I do like the Master Duel version and the TCG version, let me know. If you wanted me to just do the Master Duel version, let me know that as well in the comments down below. Make sure you guys click that like button and that subscribe button to show your support for the channel. But most importantly of all, have a good day.